Welcome back to the Gaming Tailgate Podcast. I am CDJ, joined by Tommy and JBHuskers. Guys, we're pushing 10 or so days away from the release of 27. How are we feeling now?
I'm ready to just sit in a cryogenic chamber for a couple weeks and just get the game here already.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's about time. I can't wait. Excited to see the final product, see what kind of maybe if there's any improvements from the beta that we were in there a couple weeks ago.
I'm sure quite a few and probably some surprises, but maybe we'll get to that later or a later episode. Tonight, gameplay deep dive. I think it's one of those that, Dynasty, they said was the biggest change they've made in 20 years. When it came to gameplay, again, they talked about how some of the biggest improvements they've ever made to gameplay came here or coming here in College World 27. So obviously a lot of excitement when you hear, the two main pillars of the game, Dynasty and gameplay, getting some pretty massive improvements. Let's just go through this blog. It starts off, I'm sure a lot of people have read it. If not, I shouldn't say that because it came out in that big info dump all at one time. A lot of people may not have read this. So some of this may be new. We won't go line by line. Begins with OG talking about some of the goals of the team, what they wanted to do. We're just going to go straight to the nuts and bolts of it. Right off the bat, we knew that one of the big complaints from the community was coverage in 26. Just was not there, especially zone coverage, just was not there. Right off the bat, it's about defensive alignment control. This is interesting. It's one of those that I think reading the blog without playing it, we might not interpret this all correctly, but having at least two-thirds of us played the beta and then reading this, it makes more sense of how it's implemented. This is one this year, a lot more control, a lot more in the menu control that I think fans are going to have to be ready for and be prepared for. And this is one of those defensive alignment control. Last year, you had some of this with the safeties. You could set the safety width, depth, and midpoint. This year, they're adding that for corners. I know I, personally speaking, use the safety depth a decent amount, depending where I'm at on the field and what I was facing. Didn't really use the width or midpoint a ton. This year, they're adding in depth and width. Guys, do you see yourself using this, or what situations would you use this?
For me personally, I didn't use the safety depth or width. I know, a lot of people did. Some people used it the entire game, just like set the safety depths to shallow and usually didn't have much of a problem as long as they had decent speed on the back end. But
Mm.
me personally, no, I never adjusted those. My problem was I would always change them and then forget to change them
Yeah,
back. So I'd get
I've been
burned.
there.
So
Been there, done
yeah,
that.
rather than take the risk, I just stopped adjusting them, and I'll play with these just to see if there's some benefit there. But in the end, I probably will go back to just keeping the defaults.
Yeah, I'd like Tommy. I didn't use these as much either. I didn't get to use these much in the beta either, just because hell, we were still trying to learn what buttons to push with everything being reset.
Right.
And, so this is going to be something that maybe I look into while we kind of have that little period from when the game comes out until we start an online dynasty. This may be something I might look at a little deeper and see if it's worth, using one of my macros for, since those macros are going to kind of be key
Mhm.
considering just learning that whole new button system before the guy snaps the ball is very tough.
Yeah, first couple days are gonna be rough for people. I used the safety depth. I wasn't great at 26, so there's just no insider trading or insider secrets here. So don't take this and think you're gonna win games online with it. I use the safety depth, especially in the red zone, to bring those safeties down. So I felt like, well, they're not gonna get burned deep, generally speaking. I can use the out of bounds as kind of my backline defender, so to speak. So I bring them down to help that way a little quicker on the run. I was never brave enough to use them close anywhere else. The times I would forget to change it back, like you said, Tommy, I would get burned. So I got it firmly ingrained in my mind that if I adjust them in the red zone, that next possession right away, I was resetting it. But I'm like you guys, I probably need to study this a little bit more, play with this a little bit more. I'm 27, see how it works. Especially that cornerback depth. I know in real life you see teams who they don't like, some teams don't want their corners playing up at all. To me, that seems like in a video game that's asking for a disaster, but maybe not. Maybe with the right strategy behind you, it'll work.
I think it
Smart.
depends upon who the receiver is as well. If they've
Mm,
got, the press beater, then, you maybe don't want to ever press them, so you want to give
true.
them an extra cushion or something like that. One thing I wish that they would offer, and I don't know the right way to do this, but have an option that when you let's say you have a turnover score or whatever, and
Mm,
then you eventually come back on defense, it asks you, do you want to reset your safety depth or something
right.
like that? Again, I don't know how to do that the right way because you don't want to have to reset every single
Every time.
setting every time, but some options like that might be nice.
Yeah, you don't want to get burned either. Caught it in the
Right.
wrong setting. Smart zones. This is the big one that when they announced this or teased it and then it was announced. And I know I will say in 26, like run zone quite a bit, but there are times where very much it backfired big time. What they say is smart zones improve zone defender awareness and logic. It talks about some of the to get them to play with better football intelligence, to understand the situation, route depth, spacing, and when their original area no longer has a threat. What's interesting here when they write this out, some of these are very much settings you can adjust. Some of these pre-snap, others are more in the coach adjustments. Specifically, I'm talking about Plaster. Uh, that's one you set in the coach settings. Some of these other aggressive, balanced, conservative, ultra aggressive, ultra conservative. Those are you can do that pre-snap to tell your zones how to handle it. I'm sure there's probably in the menus as well, but I know and we'll get to it. L2 is where you kind of can do that pre-snap.
Again, I think there's, you're looking to get burned if you use the ultras, especially. I
Mm.
mean, yeah, maybe if there's, especially if you're, in the red zone, or if it's somebody that always throws underneath, then yeah, you may
Mm.
go ultra aggressive or something like that. But again, if the right players, if your opponent's playing right, then he'll expect that and go over the top of
Mm.
you or something. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of the chess match of what comes out of that.
Especially if you got guys that are very high rated on the in the secondary. You kind of wonder if that ultra aggressive may be a little too overpowered, possibly, or if there's still going to be a way to defeat those good players that are in the secondary there.
Seems like it's very situational. And I know even playing in the beta, I use this a little bit. I didn't play with it enough to really have to gauge how well it worked personally.
I mean, I will say I do like it because, in if on defense, if you just back your corners off, yeah, they play deeper, but you don't cover them underneath. So in theory, you can still keep them at the traditional depth, but then set more conservative or something
Mm.
like that so that they don't get burned deep. But yeah, like I said, I think it'll be interesting to see how all of this plays out.
I think the look for work's going to be that one of the
Mm.
greater things in that. I did see that there were times where I saw it actually in action in the beta, and then there were times where it seemed like they were into their old ways in 26.
Yeah.
I did not see it 100% of the time, which was kind of interesting. I don't know if that was a bug based on the plays that were called, or if it's ratings that we're
I
looking
was
at,
gonna
or I
say,
don't know.
yeah, I would want it to be tied to rating somehow. Like if he has, 40 zone, I don't want him to still be able to cover his entire zone really easily. Or awareness or whatever, something to kind of make it to where he's not always in the right place at the right time kind of thing.
And for those who have not heard them talk about this, look for work is their goal is when a defender's zone clears out, he does not just stand there guarding grass. He will start looking for the next threat and work to help the coverage. I agree with you, JB. In the beta as well, I saw a couple times where you very much see them constantly looking for an assignment, but there were a couple times where I felt there was a defender who probably should have moved or shifted over, and he very much was firmly planted. I also saw someone on social media, and I wish I had caught the name who said it, but they made the joke. They said, "Look for work. My defenders are still unemployed here in the beta. They're not going for they're not assessing this properly." So it'll be interesting to see between the beta and retail how much this is improved. But it's always a challenge in a football or sports video game. How do you do wrong right? Because in real life, you get blown coverages, you get players who get out of position. But I will say, and I'm probably in the same group. When it comes to a video game, if I think I called a good defense, I don't want to see my guys get torched or murdered, even though that happens in real life. Right call, still bad play by the player. Plaster logic, as they say here, this is a big one. They define it as the organized chaos that happens after the play breaks down. In football, coverage does not just stop because the quarterback leaves the pocket. If anything, that's when the coverage has to become even more disciplined. There are some settings here, and there's also some coach adjustments that you go in there and make on this. What's the best way, Tommy, that you can think to maybe if somebody who does not know what this is to define this in a quick Cliff Notes kind of way?
Basically, within the first 5 seconds or whatever, you have an assignment. Let's say you're in the zone, you have an assignment, you're supposed to watch that zone or whatever. But then, 10 seconds, everything starts to break down, the quarterback's dropping out of the pocket, etc. So at that point, it's, as the blog says, it's organized chaos, basically.
Mm.
Um, it's telling your players to go and either aggressively attack one of the guys that's closest to your zone, kind of just to take on man coverage attributes, or to, make sure to contain the quarterback or something like that. Basically, it's trying to give you a little bit more control over those, plays that start to break down, and it happens all the time. I know, if 5 seconds, if the quarterback hasn't thrown the ball, like let's say the CPU, then I know there's going to be a receiver that's breaking to the middle of the field, 20 yards deep
Mm.
and going to be wide open. So the goal would be for this to try to eliminate something like that.
Did you notice when playing, did you see anything like that, Chris? I didn't do much rolling out, but did you notice anything about someone keeping an eye on the quarterback or those weak spots getting more
I
covered?
I didn't play with this setting as much as I would have liked to. I wanted to, just never sat down and made it a focus. But one thing that's interesting, you can control when the plaster activates, and I think this is where, again, those coach things are going to be so important. People are going to have to spend a lot of time studying those. I think pre-release and right after launch as well. You can choose when it activates and how quickly it happens. So that's big. I know the example I think OG gave. I don't know if it was in the blog or on the video opening drive. There's been so much content at once, I kind of forget the sources. But basically says, if you have an opponent who likes to roll out a lot, this can help with that as well. So there's a lot of people are going to have to learn this year and go to those coach settings and be ready and willing to change. Roll
Yeah,
coverage.
and to
Oh, go
to
ahead.
be clear, this is not going to help with containing the quarterback himself. This is
No.
just for the defensive backs or the
Mm.
linebackers in coverage or whatever. So, but yeah, if you have somebody that's constantly rolling out, then hopefully this will kind of combat that a little bit.
So you're saying this is only for the secondary, not the linebackers?
No, I mean, if the linebacker's in coverage, it'll apply to him, but it's
Mm.
not going to tell him to attack the quarterback or anything like that. It's just saying find a man or stay in your original zone
It's going to take time to learn it, I think.
for sure.
The real concept and the video game concept both, which don't always line up, but being realistically, that's what's going on here. Roll coverage, this is another way to lean extra coverage, help towards a specific threat, which I have long wanted. JB has a skill at getting the fastest and best receivers in the country every year in our dynasty. So this would be one. JB, I see you're looking a little nervous here. Again, this here,
Nah.
there's options here on how you want to do this, whether you want to shade towards the fastest player or to the wide side or towards the short side or to the highest overall or toward the sides with the most receiving threats or a specific target, whether it be wide receiver one, two, or three, or tight end one or two. So I mean, there's a lot of options in there that, again, more tools are better than none. But again, something I think people are gonna have to get used to and understand to incorporate into their arsenal.
Kind of
The high,
ties into this, but not really. The one thing it mentions like highest overall. I hope that the matchup, defender matchups are fixed as far as like
Yes.
fastest receiver or highest overall or whatever. Again, that's got to get fixed, but
The
we'll see.
DB, you're talking referring to the DB matchup and the coach adjustments for those who are
Yeah,
wondering.
correct.
Because I
yeah,
believe that went wire to wire in 26 being broke.
yeah, because the highest overall wide receiver is not going to be in the same position in certain coverages. Sometimes he's going to be in the slot. Sometimes he's going to even be, on the other side. But also, you can also move him out too. So that's going to be interesting to see how that kind of adjusts to certain formations, and also if you have a guy that likes to do a lot of pre-snap adjustments and movement.
And that's one of those, the DB matchup, for those who aren't aware what Tommy's referring to, is that in 26, if you made any kind of adjustment with that, their defensive assignments sometimes could get completely busted. Like defenders going across the field. Whereas in 25, I felt like I ran that every game. I would adjust that to make sure that they're guarding, maybe by speed. I think is how I'd set it in 25 and 26. It was never touch it because it's broke. You will completely break your own defense if you touch it. So that's got to be fixed, I think, for 27 to make some of the stuff effective. If that's broke, that kind of puts a hole in the side of the boat for all of this, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it just it highlights that a huge miss if they didn't fix that.
Mm. Man coverage answers. Man coverage also getting improvements this year, especially against stacks, bunches, and traffic. This is what's interesting. This is in the coach adjustments. So again, I believe you can set this from in game, and you can do this on the menu. So it's already set for you if you have a specific way you want to attack and do these things. You can set how your man coverage is against stack formations, and there's several options there, and also against bunch formations. This is one that I go through this. Some of these I'm vaguely familiar with, some I'm not the most familiar with. So I'm gonna have to spend some time before the launch of 27. I think finding some coach videos or maybe gameplay experts and get this all under wraps. Do you guys have any thoughts on how you might use this on the bat, or maybe wait till 27 comes out and figure out how it works in game?
I think it'll have to kind of see what patterns are as far as what your opponent's calling. Like, are they
Mm.
calling a lot of zig routes or just flat routes or anything like
Mhm.
that. Basically, for a bunch, the main idea is that the middle defender, or at least I think it's in the point combo, the middle defender will always cover the middle receiver, but then the two outside and inside may swap assignment depending upon where the receivers break. So, the idea that the outside cornerback get clogged up in, with all the other traffic or something like that.
Mhm.
This is hopefully to help kind of try to combat that.
Do you think it's going to help like this improvement? Do you think that's going to help with kind of your more like those hooker outs or those bubble screens? Because sometimes those get messy where like there's just a big glob of people, yet the receiver catches it and he goes off to the races.
I don't think I mean, maybe, but I don't think it'll do much for those. Just because those are typically not in bunch or stack. I mean, maybe some stack,
Mm.
but yeah, I think it's mostly just the stack and bunch where this actually comes into play.
Mm.
But still, it's more to learn. Match coverage checks. They said they've added this to help defenses handle modern offensive formations like stacks, bunch, trips, and isolated receivers. Again, they said this several times. They want football answers to football problems. They say keep in mind that in Madden, we'll have all coverage checks. College will have the basic checks and a few more options. You'll see checks across cover three match, quarters, palms, and cover six. Again, here's more examples. Again, these are in the coach adjustments where you will set this. So you can do this pregame and during in the game as well. Of course, there's so many options now when you're on the play call screen and push in R3 and then R1 to go to coach adjustments. Then you have to scroll down, find what you want, and then scroll across to find the specific choice you want. That you may want to set a lot of this pregame if you can.
Yeah. I will say at least now they're kind of on R1, L1 menus across the top. So you don't
Mm,
have to like scroll through a really long list. You can tab over to the correct sheet
true.
and change it there. But if you're on defense, you don't have a lot of time most times. So
Right.
you
Zero
you
time.
better make sure you find the change you want and just make that one and then come back and call your play.
Yep.
Might have to give us an extra pause in the online user game dynasty games there.
They're gonna have to give the defense an extra their own play clock in a way. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just a lot of options here. I know looking when the beta going through these, it's just like okay, there's a lot of learning to be going on, but it's good. More options are better than none to figure out what's most effective. Double teams and matchup tools. Again, the defense is getting a lot of weapons here. You can automatically have them double team a user selected receiver, roll coverage. We talked about that earlier. Cross man coverage, and then improved route commit win percentages. I don't know about you guys. I tried route commit. I never felt it was too successful, and I feel like what I've read online, I'm not the only one who thought that.
No, I agree. I mean, I call it when I know it's exactly going to happen,
Mm.
but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to help me very much. So, I'm
Clearly,
not
EA felt that
expecting
way
it.
too, though. If they improved the win percentages.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I'm not expecting 100% win every time, but at
No.
the same time, if I call inside and I've got a guy shading inside and you still throw that slant and I can't get in front of it, then yeah, I'm going to get frustrated.
Yep. That sounds like me. Defensive playbooks. Tommy, I know this is something you're excited for. They've added a bunch more, going from 9 defensive playbooks to 31. I know you may have caught wind about some of them, what they are. What ones are maybe you excited for here?
I mean, I'll have to wait and see what they actually, how it shakes out in the end. But basically, it's still a lot of the same like general playbooks, like 4-3, 3-4,
Hmm.
whatever. But then you'll have a focus on is it a man, is it a zone, is it zone pressure, or whatever. So I'll be curious to see, if, let's say you have man 4-3, does that mean you only have man defensive plays in there, or is it going to be, some obviously should be some zone, but yeah, I'll be curious to see how that all works out. And I mean, at the end of the day, probably a lot of people are still going to go back to custom playbooks, and so these don't,
Hmm.
factor in as much.
Right.
But at the same time, it'll be interesting to see, and maybe it, provides a little bit different challenge, a little bit different, way to play the game. So yeah, again, it's hard to say until I actually see them in action.
I think it'd be fun to kind of have like a for your coach mode, like an online dynasty on coach mode, to have you make you stick to just a playbook for those. I know we like to do the custom playbooks like in a regular online dynasty, but I think it'd be kind of interesting to kind of mold an identity of your team if in coach mode by just sticking to one of those kind of those one of those styles.
And everything we've talked about above, I understand how what the computer does with all those options. And again, they say each of the 138 are mapped to one of these styles, helping weekly matchups feel more distinct. And again, I'm just interested, will teams really feel unique? And as you go through the carousel and through Dynasty, will the playbook stay with these coordinators and will each team evolve to these styles? I mean, there's a lot of things that we won't know the answer till probably weeks or months down the line with 27, but there's potentially going to be really cool and really dynamic. But there, again, there's a lot of moving parts, which also means a lot can go wrong. Here's some of those 16 new defensive formations. Anyway, so they've really given the defense a lot of love here this year, which is good to see. In my opinion, the game was way too offensive minded. I know that sells copies and is fun, but it felt like defense sometimes you were just running your head against a brick wall. So more options, the better. As long as they work, I think should be a good year.
Going back to those six defensive styles, actually, you mentioned
Mhm.
it actually could be, kind of give the CPU at least a little bit more flair instead of having, such a broad defensive playbook. They can have more of a narrow focus, and as long as the playbooks are set up with the correct, the scheme and the correct weighting for the play calls and things like that, then yeah, I think it could be very interesting. And like you said, hopefully it follows the coaches very well and things like that. The other side of it is if you have a 4-3 man defense, hopefully the coaches are recruiting more man defenders. Because if you go out and recruit a bunch of zone defenders on a man off or man defense, then I'm betting they didn't account for that, but who knows, maybe.
Hopefully they just
Well, we're talking
recruit,
about,
period.
well, yeah, I mean, we're talking about how poor computers are at recruiting, period. So, being able to recruit to match your style is just an extra layer that I don't think exists when just basically recruiting someone is a hard task. So
Has me nervous as well.
now,
Uh,
wasn't there like some new formations? It did I don't wasn't there like a 2-6 or something odd that we'd never seen before in the beta?
I believe
There,
so.
yeah, it was a 2-5 or
Two
two,
five maybe?
2-5 or something like that.
I
Yeah.
bet,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or yeah, there was definitely some new formations. I don't see it here in the list, but I remember seeing that on a video somewhere. That yeah, it's like a 2-5 defense, and to me, that's pretty crazy. It's
Don't use it
I
on goal
guess.
line, you're saying?
Well, no, I would think you would want to do it as kind of a blitz package to kind of
True.
send pressure from different areas.
I say in a
You know,
passing situation, yes, but I'm not sure 4th and 1 I'd be calling that necessarily. I think I'd want all the big defensive linemen I could get. We'll talk
absolutely,
about that later.
absolutely.
Why?
Yeah, yeah.
Wide receiver, wide receiver, defensive back battles. A lot of work here done as well. They use a Madden picture there. Boo. Unfortunately, you probably could have changed it for college football guys.
Jeez. I do like, yeah, I did notice, like, I think we might mention it in a previous podcast, but I did notice a lot of jostling in
Mm.
terms of the animations. And so that was kind of really cool to see them as you go down the field, just seeing that them kind of jostle each other as you try to get the ball to them.
This picture was kind of a Rorschach test when it came out because if you notice the equipment and stuff first, that tells you you're more of an equipment guy. If you notice the physicality between the two players, that showed you maybe more of a gameplay guy. My first thought was, oh, thank goodness now the defenders can actually touch a receiver and do something to maybe slow them down. One thing's big here is they talk about the leverage. The big thing is that depending what the receiver's trying to do, like your defender can kind of stop them from inside routes and outside routes. Depending what route they want to run, they'll try to run it that way. Just as it's one of those things, it's a small change, but I think it's going to make a big difference throughout the game.
No, it's huge, actually. I mean, imagine again going back to that slant. If you've got a press defender
Mm.
and the receiver's trying to, go outside in order to run that slant, that's the wrong move. And so he's going to get blocked and covered easily. Whereas,
Mm.
he wants to release inside, he wants to get inside the
Mm.
defensive back and, path to the quarterback, basically. So no, I think this could be pretty huge and it'll be interesting to see. And then as well, if you have those, go routes, then they try to get outside and get down the field. So
And they talk about jostling here. That the example they've given several times is that you may not necessarily need to have the highest speed receiver or excuse me, highest speed defensive back ever. That if they have good coverage ratings, that maybe as the route is being run, there's several points throughout that route where the defender can jostle, get their hands on a little bit, slow them down. That the guy may not be the fastest defensive back in the world, but if he has very high coverage ratings, he can still be very effective.
yeah, and definitely, in 26 and even 25, speed was
all that matters.
liability. If you didn't have a
Mhm.
guy that had 90 speed, then he was odds are he was going to get burned. So hopefully now you can recruit that 86 speed cornerback that has 90 man coverage or something like that and be able to actually use him.
Short yardage gameplay. Again,
Nice screenshot.
we could have edited this for college guys, but I won't go into that again. Big thing here is, and I know when I first heard about this, I assumed it was Madden only just because that was the example. This example here of the Eagles and the tush push. I thought, okay, this meter is not coming to college, but it very much is. A QB sneak meter that I'm sure everyone has seen this, but if not, when you run a quarterback sneak, there'll be a meter that goes above the quarterback's head, kind of a gradient. The grain's in the middle, and the more likelihood of success, the bigger that grain is, the smaller it is, the less likely you'll be successful. You mentions here all the factors they kind of take into effect. It looks at the defenders in the area. It looks at individual player ratings, just higher difficulties, home field advantage, defenders in the box, longer yardage situations, late game pressure, just a lot of things going there, not to mention the player aspect. I believe they mentioned in this blog as well that I know in the beta when I ran it, there are times that it's not money. It's very much not money like it kind of was last year, unless you knew specifically how to combat it. That I'm interested to see this year if people maybe are a little more hesitant to pull out QB sneak. Maybe they will recruit with better linemen or certain lineman attributes to make it more successful. I'm just interested in the kind of chess match that goes into this.
Yeah, the center is going to be a big key onto this, just like with the tush push with the Eagles. Jason Kelsey was a big part of that. He retired, and they were a little less successful at it than they were with Kelsey there.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that they're at least making it now more of a game instead of just automatic money every time because
Mm.
it pretty much was. Like you said, there were some ways to combat it, but even those, you were 50-50 or so
Yeah, at best.
thereabouts. Yeah.
Mm.
So at least this way you have some control. Obviously, as on the defense, you have very little control other than trying to, smother the center basically.
Mm.
But hopefully you put enough pressure and again, depending upon probably difficulty and things like that, that the meter will, be a little bit more difficult.
On defense, they've also mentioned adding in new gap integrity coaching adjustment for conservative for aggressive. I know I put that on conservative quite a bit to keep him in the gap in the beta. I felt like it worked, but again, until I play somebody a user who's really good at running the ball, I'm probably not going to know exactly how successful that is. They've also added a defensive aggression into that coach adjustments as well. They say that controls how fast and aggressive your defense is. The examples they give in conservative is that they're going to slow play the run, be more prepared for play action. Basically, they're not running downhill as much. Where he's as aggressive, the example is they're playing fast downhill, attack harder. Yeah, they'll make more mistakes, but they'll also have bigger plays there as well. I'm interested to see how it works, obviously, for the user, and if each computer team or defensive coordinator has their own setting for these as well.
Yeah, and then as well on both of these, it mentions conservative aggressive, but it doesn't mention neutral. So is it just the two options, or can you kind of have a balanced approach?
With the conservative where you're more prepared for play action, but in 26 it was hard to run play action. You had no time to get you barely had anything time to get off on regular plays than you did play action. I did notice in the beta though, I was able to run play action a lot more successfully than I was in 26. So this may actually help be a little more helpful considering the fact that play action, at least in the beta, was a little more successful.
Well, in 26, definitely play action was very situational. If you try to run it on, first and 20, then no, you're probably not gonna, get the defense to bite. But if you run it on second and 2 or something like that, then yeah, you're probably gonna get them to bite hard. So, yeah, I'll be interested to see how that plays out in the end.
And also, you wanted
One,
to have the sleight of hand quarterback ability as well. Didn't you to make play
yeah,
action a little more successful?
one other note, scroll back up a little bit, is the ID, the mic. It's been updated for the run game. Um, to me, I'll be curious to see how this plays out because there's times where, a backside defensive end goes unblocked, even though he's going to have time to make that play. And so, maybe if you ID the mic, maybe he actually gets blocked. The other side of it is if you have a receiver trying to, block the outside linebacker and the tight end's trying to go out to the corner and neither one is successful. So again, hopefully there's a little bit of control over that. And hopefully not too much of too much effort to have to get that right this year, but at the same time, at least maybe there's a little bit more control.
And they mentioned there's an option to allow the offense to leave the user alert defender untargeted by default through either coaching adjustments or on the field through the protection menu. Again, more options here. There's a lot going on. To answer your question, there is a balance setting for gap integrity and defensive aggression. On the protection side, they've added a new chip block mechanic. I did not play with this in the beta. I wish I would have. Basically, now you can ask your tight end or halfback to chip a defender on the way out into a route. Any route can be assigned into a chip, and if that defender is in the blocker's path, he will try to slow him down before releasing.
Yeah, I saw this in a video and it does look really like it could be really nice. Again, like it says any route. So all you're doing is, no matter what route they're on, you just tell them to chip and then on their way out they'll stay in to block if they need to, otherwise they'll go out for their route. So it's kind of like the block and release, but at the same time it's, any route in this case.
Coach DNA 2.0. This is one of those I don't know if we can really fully gauge how successful this is at any point. But they say the coaches will have more identity, adaptability, and awareness built into how they call games, respond a little better, and attack opponents over the course of a matchup. And they gave some examples of this. They said it extends also into the offensive game planning. What they'll do, feed the hot hand, double team elite edge rushers, set up plays, adjust tendencies based on O-line and D-line matchups, etc. I don't know. I mean, we've had some kind of smart coach in the game now for 2 years, and I don't know. I kind of felt like the computer was always the same. Maybe I should give them a little benefit of the doubt, but I'm interested to see how this works. On paper, I really love what it's saying here, at least.
It talks about feeding the hot hand, but at the same time, if you have a stud running back, you should try to feed him a little bit more, especially early in the game. Now,
Right,
if
no
you
matter
can never
what.
get it going, then yeah, that's one thing. But if you have a star running back, run the ball more often than your 60 overall quarterback, you know.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see how all of this shapes up. Again, like you said, it's not been terribly different than years past in my mind, but
Mhm.
any improvement is nice to see at least.
Yes. They do mention in Dynasty and franchise coaches will now evaluate league rankings and broader team context when shaping strategy week to week.
Yeah, I'm curious if that's talking about like stats or if it's just like where your strength is on defense. Like if you have, a bunch of linebackers, then they're going to try to run up the middle instead of try to stretch it outside or something
Right.
like that. I don't know. But yeah, I'll be curious to see how that shapes up.
This is something I thought was interesting when they talked about it. The machine learned ball carrier pathing. Basically, they had the AI learn from the more talented or skilled players in the studio, kind of, I don't want to say recorded, but for lack of a better term, recorded how they would run the ball with their running backs and try to get the AI to learn that. So when they're running, it runs more like a human who is more effective than the computer generally is. Computer historically, everybody knows, like sometimes they were very disjointed or they wouldn't necessarily run to open space, where now they're looking to improve that.
Yeah, again, I'll be curious to see how that works out. Did they program it also for, poor running as well? Like, is
Mhm.
every running back in the game going to now have, the best route possible or something like that? Again, anything to make the computer a little bit more competitive, I'm all for. Just, I
Mm,
don't want to see some, you know, schlub be able to run all over me or something.
right.
But it was very easy to stop the run in 26 though against the CPU.
Mm.
There was a lot of times that they had averaged 1 yard to carry a lot of times, and so if this can make them a little more competitive on that side of the ball, then it's definitely more welcome.
Yeah, it says that frame by frame, the game will assess the situation for the multitude of factors on the screen here. So I'm interested to see it. I think it's one of the, we won't know day one how this is. It'll be about a month in when we figure out the game. The users figure out the game defensively. Can the computer still run the ball, especially when they are overpowering the user rating wise? That'll, I think, be the key. Coach chat. This is something that's only in college football. We talked about on the previous show with Dynasty and those weekly practice reps. There's going to be a lot more hot and cold players going into games than we had in the years past, and you just need to be aware of that. This feature, what it is, it lets you, and this is a great example they gave here on the screenshot. On the pre-snap, on the quick subs, you go in and you can see if a player is hot or cold. I wish they'd actually have shown a cold player here, but pretend that's a snowflake and not a raging ball of fire. What you can do is then hit triangle, and you can do this 3 times per game. You can go in and tell talk to the player as a coach, and it will reset them back to neutral. So obviously, there's sort of a strategy there. You may not want to do that on the first play of the game, even if you go into a hostile environment and maybe say your quarterback and receivers are cold. Maybe you just want to try to ride it out, or maybe there's a situation where maybe it is very early on and you have a young quarterback and you're thinking, okay, I need this guy to be okay from the get-go and you'll want to use it. So it's a nice touch. And again, I can't reiterate enough. You're going to see a lot more hot and cold this year in the game. People need to be ready for it.
Again, I see the defense at a disadvantage here because trying to do that on defense, you got to be fast.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's why defenders just let them go, Tommy. Don't worry about it.
But in the example, they specifically, I think, listed like a cornerback that got burned or something like
Mm.
that.
Dynamic weather. We talked about this a little bit last week, and obviously when we talk presentation, we'll probably bring it up again. I don't know that this was fully in the beta. If it was, I didn't get to play with it as much to have an opinion on it. But for what videos and blogs have said, it's a very, very welcome addition, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out.
Yeah, I didn't see it myself in the beta, but I saw people comment that they did.
Mm. Coach mode, again, we talked about this last week with the Dynasty breakdown. A very welcome addition. Coach mode is here. We won't spend a lot on it, but there's several different settings that you can pick. It shows you again how this works. It mentions here we are also working on a new camera specifically designed for coach mode to reinforce the feeling of seeing football through a coach's lens. I know we've seen the sideline camera, we've seen the press box camera, and they mention here that pre-snap you want to hold R2 or right trigger, and then you will get kind of behind the play, the traditional God mode view. You can pick the receiver icon and tell the quarterback who his primary read is on a play. And RPOs, you can also coach him whether you want him handing the ball off or throwing it. So I know in our community we have a lot of guys who historically have always wanted coach mode stuff in there. Yes, it was in there in 25 and 26, but it sounds like they went in and refined it and hopefully made it so it actually is a bona fide working coach mode.
Yeah, I think something in past years, the uh, option was awful, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken. So they didn't mention that here specifically, so I'm hoping that it's been
Right.
addressed. But yeah, definitely. I mean, any improvements is welcome there because yes, we've always wanted coach mode and we've always kind of just dealt with what we had. But
Hmm.
now, if it's an actual dedicated, then it could be a lot better.
Play call substitutions. This is a one that we mentioned previously on a show. They mentioned how they introduced dynamic subs last year, or the quick sub system. Now they wanted to do it on the play call screen. They mentioned that with wear and tear and confidence, composure, and hot and cold, they want to do it a little quicker because when you're on the field, you don't have time, especially on defense. So now you can do it on the play call. And it doesn't quite, I know, Tommy, we talked about this previously. It doesn't quite work like maybe we thought when we first read or heard it, the way it works on the play call screen. And there's a screen before this. Obviously, when the formations and plays are on here, you believe you hit right trigger plus one of the three plays on the screen, X, circle, triangle, and then it brings up that play and you can go through and sub the player in. It's not that if it's in another way and I did not see it, I don't see it for formation, but it is there specifically, at least for a play.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not a big fan of that. I don't want it for just one single play. I mean, yeah, I could see using that from time to time, but
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather, especially on defense, be able to sub out my defensive players without having to pause the game. I mean, like I was playing a game against the computer earlier today, and I had my backups in on purpose because I didn't want my starters to get hurt, and yet backups get injured, and now starters are on the field, and I'm trying to get them off, and I don't have enough time.
Now, if the wear and tear recovery is better, because like sometimes they'd have this minor injury, but then have one red bar, and it'd be one red bar almost the entire game. So
Mm-hmm.
if that's improved, then it's okay maybe to do this for a play. But yeah, I agree. The one play is not enough because they just don't recover that well, especially if they're three and below.
And maybe there's a way to do formation, but I know when I at least playing the beta, I did not see that. It wasn't clear to me. And even the instructions for the per play weren't right because it had R2 and had the three icons. It didn't say R2 plus. So if you just look at it, you think, oh, I just need to push one of these four buttons. Well, if you push X, you're picking a play. So that obviously doesn't take you to this screen. So hopefully that gets clarified before retail. Timing based catching. This is something that's probably been the most controversial, caused the most opinions for people online of all the additions they have made. Basically, what this is, if the pass is far enough downfield, I believe over 5 yards, enough time for you to realize you need to use a meter to catch the ball. It kind of gives you, I don't say it keeps you from catching the ball, but I view it more as a boost, and maybe I'm wrong on that. I used it a little in the beta in the skills trainer and never quite got it mastered. But I can see where this would be a welcome addition for some people. But basically, the meter will break down into three zones: early, perfect, or late. That and then just basically this tells you or helps give you that extra boost on catching. I think they want to give people control. I think this was partly in relation to the complaints that there were too many drops in 26. So I think they said, okay, we'll reward skill play here by adding this time-based catching. I don't know if JB, if you play within the beta, and Tommy, I guess let's go to you first. Just reading this and maybe what you've seen on YouTube, for example. What are your thoughts on this feature? And for clarification for users, it is defaulted to off. This is not defaulted to on. This is something that you will need to go in and activate if you want to use it.
Yeah, I mean, on the surface, at first glance, I'm immediately saying no. But after I read up on a little bit, saw some videos, it's not so bad. It's basically a risk reward. If you
Mm,
do yellow, it's just like having it off anyways. If
right,
you mistime your catch a little bit, then it's just like having it off. You still just go based upon the situation and the ratings and so forth. If you do it green, then odds are he has a better chance to catch it. Now, if the defensive back makes a play and swats the ball, he's not going to just catch that ball magically. So,
right,
and then red, of course, he's odds are he's going to drop it. So I'll be curious to see how it actually shows up on the game as well. Can you turn it on or off in Dynasty? Not as a user level, but as a league-wide level. Just because, if some guy's using this every single play and just burning you deep every single play, I mean, that gets boring. So I don't, I'd
right.
want to be able to consider turning it off if a league decided to.
Yeah, I didn't get to mess with this much in the beta as I was focusing on other things, but it'll probably be something that I will take a look and test out, like I said, during the first couple of weeks of the game before we get our dynasty started up and things like that.
One thing I will say in terms of 26 related to this,
Hmm.
if somebody at EA wanted to convince me this was in the game already without a meter, I
You'd
could be
believe it?
convinced of that.
I think so
Yes.
too, actually.
Because if you hold down the catch button too long, odds are he's going to drop it
Well, that
or
explains to me
have
a
less of
lot.
a chance to catch it at least. Yeah.
Right.
Whereas if you kind of time it the right way, odds are he's going to have a better chance to catch it.
Because
So,
they say in here, like, you want to do it before they get this, before the ball gets to their hands. So very much like reiterates what you said. If you hold on too long, you are hurting yourself. Tackling improvements in the new tackle stick. What this sounds like to me, and I did not play with this much in the beta, but basically the hit stick has been kind of revamped to where it's a tackle stick. Up is still your hit stick, down is still the cut stick, but now left is the lunge tackle and right is a wrap tackle. I definitely used the up and down, did not use the left or right. I still very much on my mind R2 and just use, I believe, X muscle memory here. Just make that conservative, get the tackle. Don't get too fancy. Don't go for the hit stick too often to, give up a big play. I think I like the idea of it, but I be honest, I can't say that I played with enough in the beta to have an opinion on it either way.
yeah, I mean, left is just the square button today and right is the X button today. So,
Mm.
um, I'll probably stick to the buttons. I imagine EA is trying to train us so that they can reassign those buttons down the road to something else.
Probably.
Good call.
So we'll see. But yeah, to me, I don't think like I'm so stuck on that hit stick mode that it would take a while for me to really train myself.
Mm. And they mentioned that they've made improvements to tackle behavior and physical interactions just to make things a little more realistic. I think with I don't want to say physics, but basically the interactions between players, which is welcome as well. Still some oddities I know in the beta, but again, that's beta. Hopefully that will not be there come retail. Formation shifts. This is something I played with a little in the beta, which I spent more time with. A very popular community, hardcore community request. It says formation shifts are back at the play call screen. Basically, on the bottom of the play call, you can toggle using the right stick and pick, what you want among those eligible formations for the formation shift. And you'll align that shifted formation, and then obviously you hike the ball to move into the one formation you want, and you run the play. The benefits to this, you can disguise your intentions, sequence formations together more naturally, and manipulate. I don't know if I like that word, but I mean they're right. Manipulate defensive recognition in ways that better mirror real offensive coordinator tactics. Yes, I played with a little, not much. I did run into a one play in practice mode where you could not hike the ball after you did a formation shift. Minor detail, but at least on paper, what do you guys think of the formation shifts? It seems pretty popular so far online, but maybe come launch, who knows what the reaction will be.
Yeah, I mean, on the surface, I like it a lot.
Mhm.
I think I'll use it quite a bit. The challenge will be depending upon how your settings are. If you only leave, 15 seconds on the play clock at the snap, then you may not have a lot of time to run that shift. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, especially how dynasties handle this. Do they give you more time? How can you manage that a little bit better? But all in all, no, I love the idea of it, and
Mhm.
they do that on Saturdays and Sundays, so it's nice to be able to do it and have a way to control it, not just the built-in play call that's there today.
Yeah, I mean, it would be something I'd never would normally do, but if it's a way to kind of help you succeed, I think, again, like Tommy said, if you have time to be able to do it, that's the problem. You're already trying to go through your menus before the ball is snapped or the play clock runs out as it is. So,
Mhm.
um, but I guess, we eventually learn how to do what we have today. So I'm sure there'll be a time where we're going to be able to be efficient at this.
And we should have known, this blog started off with all these defensive improvements. They weren't going to leave the offense empty-handed. I mean, the offense was still going to get some big weapons to work with, and this is one of them. And now, this is something that I think JB, we talked about at the start of the show, total pre-play control. This is something they've adjusted a lot of what goes on pre-play controls and adjustments. Let's just get to past OGs kind of talking here. The first is on now. Controls have been revamped. I mean, that maybe that we just need to make it basic for people first. Controls have been revamped. So the buttons you pushed last year in 26 pre-play will not be the same for 27. You will need to relearn. You will need to figure it out. Expect the first day or two to have a lot of headaches. You'll want to do something, and it will not be the right button. This year, left trigger brings up what they call Global Coverage Adjustment Hub. From there, adjust your coverage. I mean, that one is pretty simple. I did use this a little bit in the beta, and what I really liked was in this, I mean, obviously it would work this way, but just to make these adjustments in real time and you see the different adjustments, like it's slick the way this works. I really like just like you could basically tell them what you want to do, see them move, and if you don't like it, okay, just change it right there, add on the screen. It's very simple. So basically, hold down that left trigger, do what you want of these global coverage adjustments. Way easier than we had last year. There are times I still playing 26 have to stop and think, do I need to hit R1 here? Do I need to hit triangle here? What do I need to press? Now it's under L2.
No, like you said, I think that's a nice welcome addition just to make things, one place instead of trying to remember in this scenario, I got to go to this button, in that scenario, I got to go to this one. But
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, muscle memory, it's going to take a long time to get used to this. But at
Mhm.
the same time, again, if it makes it, if it's, if the logic becomes easier to manage going down the road, then I think it's welcome.
And they mentioned that, if you, for example, if you want to double the team receiver here, you hold left trigger to bring up this menu. Then you push the button of the icon of the player you want to say double, for example, and then pick what you want to do against that player. I mean, it's one of those that I think it'll be a very welcome addition, but it's going to take people maybe a couple days to get this completely, and maybe longer to really get it memorized. And this is probably the big one. We've talked about all these different things they've added with, defensively, offensively, and it's always our mantra from 26. There's not enough time to do this. How do we fix this? Then I think it's interesting. This is like their last big thing in the blog, and you could argue it's the number one thing they did this year. But I suppose you can't do the custom adjustments if you don't have everything else in place first. What is this? We've called it macros. The game is calling it custom adjustments, and I noticed in the beta when you brought this up with L1, it said macros, but on the screenshots here it says custom adjustments. So maybe we already got to retrain ourselves on 27. It hasn't even come out yet. But
Yeah.
what this is basically a set of series of adjustments you can set yourself or pre-program or pre-name, and then when you go into the game, they're there to run and use. And here's a menu. This was not in the beta. The macros were some of the preset adjustments were, but we could not go in and make our own. It was in Madden, but I did not play the Madden beta
Mhm.
enough to have any thoughts on it. But basically, for example, here you can create adjustments. You can
Was the beta 8 slots and then they're giving us 10 now, or was there 10?
well, they only had 8 of the preloaded.
Yeah, they have 8 preloaded in the
Yeah,
game, but then you
Mm.
can create 10 and, or
you
no,
can do
you
20
can,
of each, but you can only bring 10 of each into the game.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So, for example, you can name it what you want. This series of all these different combinations that before are pre-snap adjustments that you would not have time to do. Maybe you could do a series of them. Now you can really program or set what you want. You can set maybe linebackers and secondary to blitz, like in this example. Shade your coverage inside. whatever factors you want, name it. So then when you go into the game, you can also do it from the play call, just like the stunts last year. We hold down the play button. You could bring up things that apply there, and you select it. That's probably be the best way to show it here. It's just a screenshot from the blog. When you hit L1, it brings up here. They have the 8 plays. You can use one of the directional buttons or the face buttons. I believe these were all the presets. Again, in the beta, it said macros here. When it's very much custom adjustments. We're just arguing probably name there, but it's all the same thing. The presets are, you know, play QB scramble, play screen, no deep passes. And it'll make what the game has determined are the best adjustments for those. I mean, there's just a lot here. I mean, but it's welcome
Yeah.
because I know when I'm playing a human, for example, in Dynasty, like JB and I played their night, and on defense, I'm making 2 to 3 adjustments, and all it takes is one time where you fat finger it, and then you make the wrong call, or you don't have enough time to finish it, and you get burned. Whereas here, I think the goal is to make it so you don't get burned. So it's very easy to implement it and have it go in just a couple button presses. The example they give is that what took 10 to 20 presses can now be done in maybe just a couple.
Yeah, to me, this is like you said. I think it's probably the biggest change gameplay wise in probably a long time, as
Mhm.
far as the biggest impact, broadly both across offense and defense. I mean, this is probably as close to create a play as we're probably ever going to get.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe down the road we get closer, but this is by far the closest we've ever been in the past. I mean, you can do a ton of stuff on this. You can do it on offense and defense. Basically every adjustment, every hot route, every, shift, everything like that, you can pre-can macro it, like you said,
Mm.
on this settings, and then you can make the change and it automatically does that. And then B, especially on offense, it's not impacted by home field advantage. It's like
Mm.
you practiced it throughout the week, so your team knows how to do this, so they just go and do
Mhm.
it. To me, that's huge because there's certain plays that you're always going to make one certain hot route, like keep the
Mm.
running back in every time because his, I know that I'm going to need some help or something like that, or
Mm.
there's certain plays that I call that I always shift stunt the defensive line in a certain way. And so if I can do that, plus, match my defense behind them in a certain way,
Mm.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I just thought it was a welcome adjustment just because playing the first game, and you notice just how different the layout is on adjustments
Mm.
pre-snap. And I was like, yeah, this is going to be very helpful considering you got to do at least a couple of extra button presses to get where you need to go on certain things in 27 as compared to 26. So this is definitely going to be one of the best additions to the game.
Like you said, Tommy, we can make 20 offensive, 20 defense. You'd only bring 10 of each into the game. I guess the way to view it is those are the 40 are what you installed in the fall, but then you bring in on a per game matchup the 10 on each side, what you just think you need is most important versus that week's opponent.
The only thing I kind of don't like in terms of bringing the 10 into the game is
Mhm.
that based upon what I saw in the menus is you set it at the main menu, you choose your 10 or whatever, and that's
Mhm.
globally. So if you're in multiple dynasties or whatever, you have the same 10 in every single dynasty. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but it'd be nice if
Mhm.
you could somehow change that in the dynasty itself for like, your coach scheme or something like that.
Right, right.
Have you seen what they did with that? Like how you choose them? Is it like recruits or you drag it up to the top 10 or are they check boxes? Has anybody like for the top 10
Well,
or
They have
if you
saved
notice,
and
QB20?
benched adjustments on this
Oh,
yeah,
screenshot.
there we
yeah,
go. So maybe it's a
yeah,
button. Maybe it's a
yeah.
button that you move it, flip
I,
flop it or something.
I suppose. I don't know
It's
that for sure,
probably
but I'm
it's
guessing.
probably like a depth chart or something like that. Like if you have 10 in the top, then you choose one and then go down to the bottom and choose which one to swap it with or something like that. Or if you only have five at the top, then you can choose one from the bench and bring it up, if I had to guess. The one thing I did see is that it's in the customize section of the menu, so it looks like you should be able to save these like to share these online, just kind of like a custom playbook or something like
Hmm.
that.
Mhm.
I mean, to me, that's a good thing, but then at the same time, does it become some unstoppable defense because somebody created the right set of macros or something like that, and then shared them out. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. But I'm very interested in. My mind's already kind of planning out some of the things I want to do with it. Yeah, but I do know for sure that there's certain opponents that I always play, especially on defense, that I typically make a lot of the same adjustments every play. Like if I know somebody that scrambles their quarterback a lot, I'll put a defensive lineman in spy or something like that, especially like a fast defensive end or something. So, to have that kind of already pre-scheduled, and I don't have to try to, you know, go through it with my hands very quickly. Instead, I can just focus on the play at hand and be ready to go right from the snap.
And it's worth mentioning that they did say that, let's say you can do a series of these, two different adjustments. And I'm just going to make an easy example here. One has where the linebackers show blitz, and the other has where maybe both do. The most recent one takes precedence. There is no, well, I told you on this one to do this, and second one this. If there's a conflict, the most recent adjustment wins.
So I'm curious if let's say you don't give any assignment to the defensive back in the first one and don't give any assignment to the linebackers in the second one, can you kind of merge the two? Or is it everything resets and then now just goes to, just the defensive back adjustments or something?
That's a good question. I said this wasn't in the beta, so
yeah,
we'll all learn together.
One thing I did read in the PC gameplay blog, in terms of your visual settings, I've never played Madden on PC, so I didn't know if this was possible before, but it's at least in college football. I'm a PC player, so I'm at least interested in this. You can change your visual settings for how the visual fidelity of everything for the gameplay versus non-gameplay sections. So for example, if they're showing the sideline, you can have a higher fidelity versus gameplay. You want to make sure that everything stays fast and moving quickly, and have a lower fidelity, but still be able to attune it however you want. So to me, I thought that was a welcome addition. Especially in a replay, they're going to zoom in and you're going to see more of the play, more of the player rather. So, I think that could be, a nice adjustment. And then as well, if you don't have a great computer, don't have a great graphics card, in theory, you could lower the gameplay settings really low so that you can still keep up with everything as you play.
So with that, we'll wrap up this gameplay deep dive for College Football 27. On paper, this sounds like it's going to be a really, really good year. Let's just hope everything works as intended. No issues, no bugs, no patches breaking things. Maybe we'll be back here in a month breaking down some of these big adjustments.
I was going to say, is this the same developer as the before?
You never know. You never know. For Tommy and JB, I'm CDJ. Everyone, thank you for watching and listening to this edition of the Gaming Tailgate Podcast.